Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome to another Shamshir Sound video. Today we're going to be talking about the basics of Native Instruments Massive. One of you guys requested to do a beginner tutorial, so we're going to dive right into it, guys. Before we jump in, make sure you check out that survey that I linked below. You can win a one-on-one hour video call with me. It's a music producer survey just to learn about your guys' issues, what issues you guys have with music production, sound design, sample selection. So check that out. Just takes a couple minutes to fill out, and I will announce the winner on June 1st at 12 p.m. So let's dive right in. We're going to be talking about the basics. So when you first launch Massive, I recommend going to File, New Sound. So this is how you initialize the preset. You're starting from a clean slate. Now, when you do that, there's a lot in your face, but it's actually very simple. When I first started using Massive, it was a bit intimidating. Sometimes I was like, I don't know what this is, or, some of this, like, what is this? Like 30, 30, 30, what does that mean, But ignore this for now. We're going to first start with the oscillators. So we have 3 oscillators. So these oscillators all generate their own sound, and they can be fed into filter 1 or filter 2. We also have a modulation oscillator. So this is another sound engine. It can generate sound based off of a variety of techniques, some new, some old. We also have the noise oscillator. So this is like a 5th one. And it can mix in a variety of noises like white noise, brown noise, different types of noises that are available. Serum is also similar in the sense that it has like different noises you can select from. And then we have the feedback. So really the sound itself, the core, is coming from this leftmost column. And we're first going to start with oscillator 1. So we can see that it's in the middle here. If you double click, you can reset where it's being routed to. So we're going to keep it simple, and we're going to route it to filter 1. That's what the F1 and F2. So it will be going to this filter. So we have a saw wave. Now, let's briefly explain the filter because it's going to play a big role in what you're doing. So filter 1, you can select from a bunch of filters: low pass 4, low pass, high pass, all pass. I recommend sticking with the basics for now. So we're just going to go with something like low pass 4. So you have your cutoff filter and you have your resonance. The resonance is responsible for this. It's going to accentuate that, and that's going to help you a lot when you want to make some vowely, really throaty, high-driven types of noises. But simultaneously, when you guys put a low-pass filter on, you will lose a bit of sparkle, so I usually compensate by bumping up the resonance a bit. It's difficult to hear unless you're really paying attention, but now we have it, a resonance at around 8. So overall, a recap, we have oscillator 1 being fed into filter 1 with a low pass filter on there with a small bit of resonance, just a little, give a little boost near the end. That's all it's doing. It's just giving a little boost. So you might ask, well, where does filter 2 come into play, and why is there this, right? And why is there this? And why is there the mix? Well, there's many different ways you can approach this. It's quite sophisticated, but very simple. So to briefly summarize, when you have this in parallel, the PAR, parallel will basically drive the filters simultaneously. The sounds will go through, the oscillator will go through filter 1 and filter 2 simultaneously. From what I read in the manual, when you do serial is going to feed one filter into the next. So think of it as like a chain of events from low pass filter into the high pass and then going to the main output. So usually I just do my sound design in parallel, but I can see where if you have like a weird filter here, then you could try doing serial or maybe a mix in between, and you can automate this too. But we won't dive too much into that now, but I just wanted to explain that this is going to make it so that it's feeding one filter into the next, and parallel will play them simultaneously. So we'll just leave them at parallel. That's the default. And mix 1 and mix 2, this again is going to mix and be the fade, kind of the filter between the two mixes. So if you had two filters going on, you could experiment with this and also experiment with that to see how you get your desired sound. But we're keeping it basic. So again, we got one oscillator going to filter 1 with mix 1. So now let's start introducing some more oscillators. When we use an oscillator, we have one thing called the wavetable position. And it's very simple. Wavetable position, when it's at the far right at the value of 100, it is at the saw wave position. If you bring it all the way to the left, it is at the square wave. So that's what those indicate. Square to saw, square to saw 2, poly saw. So you're doing a mix amount. You're basically changing the waveform when you move that wavetable position. And again, that can be automated. You could choose, do you want saw, or do you want square, or do you want somewhere in between? So you can see you get that mix amount, which is really cool. And the intensity is very similar to the amplitude. The intensity is kind of like a roll off or a filter. So usually as a beginner, just stick with wavetable and find the desired amplitude. I'm not really changing intensity a whole lot. I'm usually playing with the wavetable, and the amplitude, of course, is your volume. So next we could start saying, well, let's route this. Let's make like a little cool sound. So we have this, we can go down in pitch. How do you go down in pitch? Left click and hold and bring it down 1 octave, -12. So now we have like a bass sound underneath the normal saw. Or if you wanted to do like a sub, then go to that desired pitch that you want. In this case, we have 0 and then 1 at -24. So let's leave the third oscillator off, and we're not going to go into modulation oscillator today. This is a bit sophisticated. We're just going to introduce a bit of white noise. So that's giving it a little bit of air. If you guys need to add a little bit of air, a little bit of crispiness, sparkle, white noise is going to be a brilliant way you can introduce that and really give it a little bit of sparkle, a little bit of air towards the high end of your synth. And be very careful. You don't want to overdo it because this would sound weird, right? But when you do just the right amount, in this case, I put it like, and a value of like 11 or lower. You could even go lower, be a bit more discreet. At a value of 8, it's just there, but not too much. It's not in your face. So the last sound generator, and of course we'll talk about modulation oscillator in a future video because it ties into a lot of cool things which you can do here, which I'll have to explain. The feedback oscillator is something that can mix in the sound from the end. So let's say the sound is done. It has a saw, sub saw, it's going through the low pass. The feedback can reintroduce that sound to the source again. And the cool thing is that can give it a bit of saturation and drive the sound and give it a lot more body. So if your sound is needing some body, guys, you can see there it already is giving it a little bit of low mid harmonics. We'll just leave it there because it's extreme. It really shows the point. So we have that feedback oscillator. Great. So we now have a basic understanding of how these work. And we're not using this. It's off. You could also turn the amplitude all the way down. It's going to do the same thing. Now we're just going to go towards the effects, the EQ, and the insert effects. So think of the effects here as kind of like the cherry on top. It will give you 2 different effects categories here. And keep in mind, the effects 2 is actually limited. It doesn't have as much as the effects 1. So just keep that in mind. When you do your workflow, you might want to put a specific effect in effect 1 so you have the ability to put what you want here. And what do I mean by that? For instance, you can't put classic tube drive on both of these. You see it's missing on effects 2. So just something to keep in mind. So here I'm going to put a reverb on effects 2. The controls are very simple, guys. That's why I love Massive. Color, density, size, and dry wet. The density has the lowest impact in terms of an audible change, but it does have a big change. But I always usually leave density at default value. And what I play a big role in, the biggest one for me, is size and dry wet. So I'm going to put something like a small size. There we go. And we have the dry wet at 11, the size at 40. Now let's see if we want to add something to effects 1. You can choose from classics like flanger, chorus, phaser, delay. We're going to put on, there's 3 different types of like distortion: classic tube, teletube, not Teletubbies. That's cringe. And Bronner tube. So I really like classic tube and Bronner tube. This will give a lot of drive, so you just have dry wet in the drive. You can see it makes it really mean. It gives it a really like aggression. So we got it there. Dry wet 100%, drive at 37%. And let's finish off with some EQ. So the EQ, again, so simple. You have a low shelf, which will turn up low-end frequencies. You have a high shelf, which will boost high-end frequencies. And then you have a boost button in the middle, which can, if you turn it up, boost certain frequencies or lower certain frequencies, and you get to choose which frequency. Now, this boost and this frequency have nothing to do, these center 2 knobs have nothing to do with this or this. So even if you went like this, these values will be the same. So keep in mind that boost and frequency are relative to each other. You'll be ducking the frequency of this. Let's show you here. Or boosting it. But those two are just, they're sharing a relation. They don't have anything to do with the high shelf knob or the low shelf knob. So I recommend, as a beginner, don't delve into this yet until you learn more about the EQ and maybe what you want to boost. Maybe sometimes I've used it where I've boosted a bit of mid frequency in the sound. Sometimes I've had it where I've ducked a bit of frequency if maybe the sound had a harsh sound and I wanted to back it off. So let's boost a bit of the high end crisp and maybe introduce a little bit low end too. You see how it's given it a nice little air. It's given a lot of high. The high shelf EQ in Massive is amazing. I love it. It's so silky. It gives that nice high end boost. It just is so pleasing. So pleasing. You see how it kills the high end if we go in the reverse? So we got 61 for the high shelf and 56, but we won't play around with this. We won't touch this for now. I want to keep it basic. With effects out of the way, with the filter out of the way, and with the oscillators out of the way, without, now he's saying modulation oscillator, but that's a future video. We're going to be talking about panning. You can control panning here. So you can move it left or right. You can notice there's the number 4 here. And this takes us to the next thing, which is these guys here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So these guys here, 4 by default is your volume envelope. So this is your envelope controlling your initial sound. You have your attack. You have your level, which is like the sustain. You have the release, which will increase the tail. So we're going to choose something like this. And there's some other knobs as well. That's going to be for a future video. But we're just really focused on this one. The attack, the level. This you can usually have it at a higher. This is kind of like where it starts off. So let's say you wanted to make a pluck. You could reduce this. Maybe make a short decay. You know, fine tune that release however you like. And this level is like the absolute maximum. We We also have the delay here, which will be like an offset. So if you wanted the MIDI to be playing like 5 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds delayed, but we're gonna dive into like morphing and all the extra stuff into in a future video. So for now, that's really, we're gonna keep it simple. And the other envelopes are used also. You can also replace it and tell it, no, I want envelope 3 to control the volume. But by default, it's using envelope 4. Now, the other envelopes are really, they're about modulation. And that's going to be in a future video where we talk about how to use modulation, how to make those wobbles, how to make those like screams and make those dubstep growls. That's where automation comes into play, but it's not limited to that. I use automations all the time to give movement, and that way you can control something. And they're very simple. I won't dive too deep into it, but I'll just show you that you can take this and assign it to anything that has a box. Any of these that have a box, and you can dictate like minimum max values where it can go up towards like 1 octave and back to 0. So there's just so much that you can do. And with these automations, you can also turn them off, or you can mute them. If you mute them, it turns them off, and you can unmute them. You can see there. So we're going to just turn that off as well. So now we're kind of back to the basics. And really, to wrap things up, guys, let's look at the insert effects. The insert effects, when we go to the routing tab, the insert effects can be routed a variety of ways. Massive allows you to move stuff back and forth. So let's say you wanted the insert 1. Let's make it like a bit crush. So let's check this out. Off and on. So let's say we wanted that to be before the filter because maybe it's not as pleasing. So we can just left click. And here's a better idea of what it would do. So you can see that we're crushing it before that nice deep low pass filter. And you can do the same thing with insert 2. So insert 2 or insert 1, they can go in a variety of fashions. And this is going to play a big role with in the future when you choose, do you want it to be serial? Do you want it to be parallel? How are you mixing the two filters together? And how are they going in? Is one sound going to both? So you have a lot of control. Though Massive looks simple, it's a lot of sophistication if you actually are looking for it. So I usually do something like that where like I want insert 1 to be before the filter, and then I put insert 2. I don't know. Let's say here I put, maybe I put like a high pass low pass filter. And I've put it here. Maybe I want to cut out some of the high end. All right, so whatever sound that we desire. We've now, let's just do a quick recap, guys. We've explained these oscillators, but we're going to have to go into more detail because there's some bonus stuff here. This will change the harmonic sound of your oscillator. They'll change it, but I don't want to go into this. It's just going to confuse you more. We've talked about the noise generation and the feedback. We've talked about the effects here and the effects here, including the EQ. And we've briefly touched on automation, but that's going to be a future video where I talk about automation, the phase, the modulation oscillator, the detailed harmonic qualities of the oscillators, as well as the bonus virtual analog different wavetables, explaining the differences between the wavetables. And in the next videos, I'm going to go over the global setting, the voicing setting, the control filter setting, as well as this stuff over here. Before we wrap up, I think as a beginner, I think it's important for you guys to just ensure that if you guys are doing a pitch automation, you want the synth to go up 1 octave and down 1 octave. If you guys are ever modulating this bad boy here, remember in FL, just like in any synth, you need to dictate, can it go up 1 octave? 12 semitones is 1 octave. But you also have to tell Massive in this oscillator section that it has those min-max values. So if you want it to go down 2 octaves, potentially, you got to tell it like that, 24 minus 24. And I would do the same thing here. Finally, the last things here that I think are applicable for a beginner is the glide. The glide, you have the time here, and there's two different modes for the glide. Check it out, listen to it, see how it affects your MIDI. And this is the time of the portamento or the glide. This I'm gonna have to explain to you guys in the modulation oscillator because it's correlated to these two. And we also have the vibrato here. So the vibrato, I usually turn it on mono, this vibrato. And if we listen to the vibrato, I'm going to turn up the depth all the way. I'm going to put the rate at like 69. Let's bump up the envelope of 4, controlling the amp. Let's turn off this filter. Let's come back here and show you. So that's like your vibrato right there. And you can see, well, why does it have a number 1? This is going to be a future video, the macro control. You can designate a knob to dictate like, hey, number 2 knob will go down to 50%, and you can control. There's a lot of modulation you can do with macro knobs, and macro knobs can be assigned to as many things as you like. Perhaps you wanted this number 2 knob to turn the low pass to 50% and turn down the square wave. There's a lot that you can do with this, so I'm going to be talking about that in a future video. But that's pretty much a wrap for the beginner video of Massive. I think I've covered the simple stuff, and in the next video we're going to get a bit more sophisticated, and in the third video we're just going to go as complex as we can go. But I don't want to overload you guys with just too much information. Focus on the envelope 4 for your volume. Focus on your oscillators and the wavetable position, the amplitude, and what kind of filter you're using when you're routing it. Focus a lot on your effects, your EQ, your insert effects, your feedback if you want to give it a little bit more low end, mid drive, a little bit of saturation, and of course the noise oscillator. But be my guest to experiment with these different stuff, and I will further explain some more stuff about Massive, and we're going to get it more complicated in the next few videos. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to smash that like button. I love using Massive. This is my favorite synth, and so I'm going to be using this a lot for the sound design of the videos you guys have been requesting. So make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys are subscribed. I'm giving away a sound pack. I think we've hit 500 subscribers already. So thank you so much, guys, from the bottom of my heart. It means so much to me. Thank you for spending time to watch these videos. And that is a wrap, guys. Please make sure you check out that survey. There's limited applicants, only the first 100. So please make sure you check out that survey, fill it out. I want to know about your producer problems so I can make better videos and better sample packs for you guys and products in the future. So again, thank you guys, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.